So now we learned about nested routes. Now imagine a bigger Vue application where you have dozens or maybe even hundreds of different routes, some routes deeply nested in other routes. You can also have multiple levels of nesting. You could have children here on this nested route as well. So imagine an application where you have a lot of such nested routes. If you have such an app, constructing links like we're currently doing it, like this, can quickly become cumbersome. You always have to add the full path here and build it out like this. You have to build such a long string which describes the path you want to navigate to. Now, because this can get cumbersome, the Vue router offers two very useful features which make building such links, which we pass to router link, more convenient. The first useful feature which we have is the fact that the toProp on router link does not just take such a string link. It does take that, but not just. Besides passing such a string which holds the path, you can also use an object as a value for to. For that, of course, you need to bind to dynamically with a colon. And then this object may have various options that allow you to describe the route you want to load. In this object, you can set a path property. And that then takes a string which could be /teams plus this ID. So what we returned as a string before. Now, by just doing that, we of course don't gain much. We basically do what we did before, but now inside of an object. This gets more useful if we combine it with another nice feature the Vue router offers, and that would be named routes. We can assign a name to every route which we have, simply by adding a name property to the route config. Here, for example, we could name the route teams. We could name this nested route here as well. Team-members maybe. The names are totally up to you, they just should be strings. So now I assigned two names, and of course you can assign names to any routes you want. And now we can leverage that name, team members. Back in the team's item component, now instead of setting the path property, which we can do, we can set the name property on this route location object, which we pass to. And here we can use team-members, for example, making it clear that this router link should load this nested route. Of course, this route has a dynamic segment, so we should also set this. And we do that by adding a second property to this object, which describes the destination we want to go to. And that's the params property. Params takes an object where you now can set up your params as key value pairs. And of course, I mean the parents which are expected by the route with that name. So in this case, that team member's route wants a team ID param, because that's the name we chose here as a dynamic segment. Hence, here we can add team ID in this nested object, which we provide to params, and then set our value here to this ID. Now, arguably, that's a bit more code than before, but it actually has two great advantages, I would say. It's very readable and maintainable, and it has one extra huge advantage. If you ever should decide that you want to go with a different path, let's say team instead of teams, then you don't need to go to this team item component and update the path everywhere where you used it. Instead, the name didn't change, so you don't need to update anything here, and you can still conveniently change the path how often you want. That's why navigating by name instead of by path might be a useful pattern, especially of course in bigger applications where you use a route in a lot of different components. You then don't have to update all those components whenever you decide to change the path. And that's why passing such an object instead of a string to can be useful. By the way, you can provide the same object to this router push in case you should be navigating programmatically. You can provide the same kind of object to this push method, but that's just a side note. And if I do that and save everything and reload, our links here therefore still work fine, and I can load different team members now by passing this object to 2. And the view router will analyze this object, compare it to your route setup, and create the correct anchor tag with the correct link to the to-be-loaded route and therefore component.